2:14 a.m. Please take a careful look at this security camera frame. The young woman seen in the footage is Heather Maples, 22 years old. This moment represents the final recorded image of Heather preserved by any surveillance system. In the recording, time appears to pass quietly. There is no visible panic. There are no obvious warning signs of danger. Nothing in the frame suggests that anything unusual is about to happen. Heather walks calmly through the camera's field of view. She then exits the frame. After that moment, she is never captured on camera again. At the time, no one could have known what would follow. Only hours later, a serious incident would be discovered inside her apartment. To fully understand the events that led to that discovery, it is necessary to go back 24 hours earlier. August 2015, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Murfreesboro is a growing college town located southeast of Nashville. It is home to Middle Tennessee State University and a large population of students and young professionals. The city is known for its active social scene, apartment communities, and nightlife frequented by young adults. Heather Nicole Maples was living in Murfreesboro during this period of her life. She was 22 years old and residing at a modern apartment complex known as The Cove. Heather did not only live there, she also worked at the leasing office for the complex. According to co-workers and residents, Heather was familiar to many people in the community. She interacted regularly with tenants as part of her job. She was described as friendly, approachable, and responsible. Heather enjoyed music and conversation. She was known for being social and maintaining positive relationships with those around her. There were no known disputes or conflicts involving her. Nothing in her daily routine suggested that she felt unsafe. At 22, Heather was at a point in life where many people are focused on work, friendships, and future plans. Those who knew her described her as independent and motivated. From the outside, her life appeared stable and ordinary. After completing her work week, Heather decided to spend the evening with friends. This was not unusual for her or for others in her age group living in Murfreesboro. Together with a group of close friends, Heather went out to socialize. That night, the group visited Gentleman Jim's, a bar known among local residents. Later, they continued on to another nearby bar called The Handlebar. Both locations were familiar spots for young adults in the area. According to witness accounts gathered later by investigators, the evening progressed normally. Heather appeared relaxed and in good spirits. There were no reports of arguments, disturbances, or concerning behavior involving her. Music played inside the bars. People talked, laughed, and moved in and out of the spaces as the night continued. Heather participated in the evening like many others around her. No one reported seeing Heather express fear or discomfort during this time. There were no incidents that stood out to friends or witnesses. By all accounts, it was an ordinary night out. Around 2 a.m., the night came to an end. Heather said goodbye to her friends in the parking lot. She then got into her car and drove back to the Cove apartment complex. Heather arrived home safely. After getting inside, she sent a few text messages to friends. The messages were brief and indicated that she had made it home. These texts would later be identified as the last outgoing communications from Heather's phone. After that point, there were no further calls or messages from her. At approximately 2:14 a.m., a security camera recorded Heather moving through the complex. She walked through the camera's view without any visible signs of distress. Moments later, she exited the frame. There was nothing in the footage that appeared unusual. No one was seen following her. No sudden movements or interruptions were captured. This video would later become significant, not because of what it showed, but because of what followed after Heather left the camera's view. Friday, August 7th, 2015. As the sun rose, daily activity at the Cove resumed. Residents left for work and classes. The leasing office prepared to open as usual. However, one detail quickly became noticeable. Heather was not at work. For those who worked with her, this absence was unusual. Heather was known to be punctual and responsible. She did not miss shifts without notifying someone. As the morning progressed, co-workers attempted to contact her. Phone calls went straight to voicemail. Text messages were sent but received no response. 9 a.m. passed. Then 10 a.m. passed. Still, there was no word from Heather. Concern began to grow. A prolonged lack of communication did not match her normal behavior. Given this concern, a decision was made to check on her directly. A friend of Heather's, who was also a manager at the apartment complex, walked to her unit. The purpose was to conduct a welfare check. This is a standard step taken when someone cannot be reached and their safety is in question. When the manager arrived at Heather's apartment door, something immediately stood out. The door was unlocked. According to those who knew Heather, she typically kept her door locked. Seeing it unlocked raised concern. The door was pushed open gently. Inside, the apartment was quiet. There was no response when Heather's name was called. Heather was found inside the apartment, unresponsive. Emergency services were contacted. Authorities later confirmed that Heather had died. Murfreesboro police officers arrived and secured the scene. Access to the apartment was restricted. Homicide investigators and forensic technicians were called in to begin their work. Early findings suggested that this was not a random burglary. There were no signs of forced entry. The locks and doors were intact. Items inside the apartment did not appear to be missing. There was no evidence of a break-in. These observations guided the direction of the investigation. Investigators considered the possibility that the person responsible may have been someone Heather knew. They also considered that the individual may have entered the apartment without force. As the forensic examination continued, evidence was collected from various areas of the apartment. Among the items documented was a fingerprint found on bedding inside the apartment. The fingerprint did not belong to Heather. This discovery became a critical piece of evidence. The fingerprint was submitted for analysis through law enforcement databases. When results came back, investigators identified the fingerprint as belonging to Brandon Richmond Bowling. Bowling was 22 years old at the time. Brandon Bowling was not unknown to Heather. He was part of her broader social circle. They had attended gatherings and social events in the same group. Witnesses later confirmed that Brandon had also been present at the same bars Heather visited on the night of August 6th. This information placed him in proximity to Heather during the final hours before her death. Police located Brandon Bowling and brought him in for questioning. During the interview, Brandon acknowledged being at Heather's apartment in the early morning hours. He stated that his presence there was consensual. He claimed that he left afterward and that Heather was alive when he departed. This explanation was offered to account for any physical evidence linking him to the apartment. However, investigators determined that Brandon's account did not align with the forensic evidence collected at the scene. Based on the inconsistencies, police arrested Brandon Bowling. His personal belongings were seized, including his mobile phone. Digital forensic specialists examined the contents of the device. During this process, investigators located material directly related to the case. The digital evidence contradicted Brandon's earlier statements. It provided investigators with additional confirmation of his involvement. This evidence became central to the prosecution's case. Combined with forensic findings, it strengthened the overall timeline of events. In February 2018, nearly 3 years after Heather Maples' death, the case reached a critical point. Brandon Richmond Bowling faced multiple forms of evidence linking him to the crime. After reviewing the evidence, Brandon agreed to a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and aggravated rape under Tennessee law. The court sentenced Brandon Bowling to 40 years in prison. Under Tennessee statutes, the sentence must be served in full. There is no provision for early release. With the sentencing, the case was closed from a legal standpoint. Heather Maples lost her life at the age of 22. Her death had a lasting impact on those who knew her and on the Murfreesboro community. Life at the Cove apartment complex continued. Residents moved on with their routines. But the events of August 2015 remained part of the complex's history. Heather's name continues to be remembered in connection with this case. Her story remains a reminder of how ordinary days can take unexpected turns. This case underscores the importance of personal safety and communication. It highlights how quickly circumstances can change. Maintaining awareness, setting boundaries, and staying connected with trusted individuals are essential considerations in daily life. Thank you for taking the time to follow this case. If you found this documentary helpful, please like and subscribe to continue following future case files.